Hello there. You're watching or listening to Badass Ladyfolk. I'm your host, Christine Stoddard. And this episode, my guest is Hollie Harper. Welcome, Hollie.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I had director who you know, Melanie Gaudreau, on the show.
Yes.
She was our first guest.
Oh.
And that, dear listeners, is how Hollie and I met working on this production. But Hollie is really just a brilliant all-around actress.
Thank you.
Comedian especially.
Thank you. I'm silly.
You are silly.
I say inappropriate things, and then I realize that's my strength.
I like how everywhere on your branding it's comedy nerd.
Yes.
So tell me, what is that about?
A comedy nerd. Okay, it took me a long time to realize I was a comedy nerd. But, okay, it started when I was like 8 or 9 years old with Mad Magazine. And I was like,
R.I.P.
Yes. And then it was cracked. You know what I mean? But I felt like, I remember when I saw it for the first time, I was like, is this real? Like I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, and then cracked was like a shoot off of Mad. Mm-hmm. I was like religious with it. And then any kind of comedy sitcom, any kind of comedy movie. And then I love funny songs. I love sketch shows. I love sitcoms. I love funny moments on talk shows. And I realized you're a freaking comedy nerd. Like I love to do stand up. I love to do funny plays. So I just am a nerd for things that are comedic.
Yeah. What were besides Mad and besides Cracked, what were some of the early references, some of the sitcoms and movies and whatever else you just adored as a kid?
Okay, this is so great. Three's Company.
Yes.
When I was little.
Very good.
That stuff was trash. It was trash, but it was high art trash. And I realized I started getting to the point where I started keeping like a journal. I've kept a diary. I kept a diary from 5 to 25. It's the strangest thing to go back. I kept a consistent diary for 20 years, from kindergarten until the second year out of theater school.
Did your parents read it?
They read a couple things. I got grounded a few times. I was like, why y'all reading my stuff? Like, what's wrong with you? But I was not a bad kid. I was just like, damn. I guess I feel like it right here, but not a safe space. Like, damn, why are you looking at my diary just to get intel? But I would keep a diary, and I would watch sitcoms, and I would start listing different types of jokes. And I didn't realize that I was really just breaking down what comedy was.
Yeah.
To the point where I'd be watching Three's Company, and I remember the first joke I remember realizing was double entendres. How when things mean two things. Mm-hmm. Like remember Jack and Chrissy be like moving a couch, be moving a mattress in the bedroom, and Janet would be in the living room, and they'd be like, "It's too big," and she'd be like, "So let's stick to it." Like,
yeah.
So that just that
show was not for children.
It was not.
But so many people watched it as little kids.
Girl, I was addicted. I was addicted. I remember being like, "Who's better, Chrissy Snow or Janet?" Like. And then it's so weird because like now you could not do this Jack pretending to be gay.
Yeah,
like what?
Yeah, that wouldn't be okay.
It was ridiculous. It was crazy. But yeah, the first things were watching women be funny, Laverne and Shirley, watching them be funny, and the fact that there were different types of humor.
Yeah,
I've always loved how people have different types of humor, and I really studied that in movies, and then I love seeing it in different people's characters.
Yay! Okay, so
yes.
when did you start doing comedy?
I started
even as a kid.
I don't
like
know.
What's some funny little show or performance you did for your family? Who knows?
I don't know. I just remember my son is in the 6th grade, right? And let me tell you something. When you have kids, you get these crazy flashbacks of things you did.
Yeah.
When you see them at that age, and you've long forgot. long forgot. So my son had a science project, and like I went through this. I have a 16-year-old daughter. So I went through this last night BS. They do. It'll be like 10 o'clock at night. They'd be like, I got a science project tomorrow. You're like, what? Like, I got to rush. I got to get and then you got to come up with a hypothesis. And like, remember that 3-boarded?
Yes.
It was a nightmare.
Panel.
But I was in
and they're so big.
They're huge. And they still do it. You know, just once, I want to do just an offshoot. I want to do adult science projects with comedians. Like, is so-and-so full of shit? Like, and then like you experiment.
then.
If then, your hypothesis, our conclusion, this is our data. But I had some science project due. I don't even know what it was, but I waited. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, my God, I'm just going to have to dazzle them with a performance. And my dad was like, no. Like,
This was middle or high school?
I was 11 in 6th grade. And everyone had to go up and present this project. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I just came up in front of the class, and they're all just sitting there, like, they're like, because they knew I was a little silly. They're like, what is this girl going to do? And all of a sudden, I said, hit the lights. And I had a friend who was on the lights, and the light went out, and the teacher was like, what's going on? And the lights came on, and it went poof, this big, like, baby powder, and it came up to Herbie Hancock's Rockets, like, doo, 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 doo. And I started, like, moonwalking and, like, doing this whole dance. And I was just something like, are the clouds really the clouds? Something like it. But it was ridiculous. And I remember I got like an A for presentation and then like a D for my report. And I was like, and he was like, so you averaged out to B minus. I was like, all right.
Was the teacher laughing during all that?
The teacher was dying laughing. The teacher was like 28 years old. Like, what is happening? I was like dancing all around the desk. I was like leaping over the desk and like, oh my God, it was ridiculous. I like changed. I had like an outfit and I went out in the hallway and I came back in.
Wow.
And then I was just, and they were just like, why'd you do all that? And I was just like, I had nothing prepared. And I was like, I think if I could just razzle dazzle them, they would just, and it worked. All the teachers were like looking at me for a week like, you the kid with the baby powder? The janitor's like, I had to clean that shit up. Janitor was pissed. You the kid with the baby powder. I was like,
early improv, right?
Early. It was ridiculous. I think back on that. I'm like, if my son did that now, I'd be so pissed. I told him that, and he was like, you just did
Mommy.
that. He said, why'd you you didn't do your project? I was like, no, I danced it out. I had sound effects. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
I had a little friend on the side working the lights.
Okay, so let's fast forward to theater school. What made you decide to do that?
Well, it was crazy.
Like to go.
I know.
Right?
What was crazy is that, okay, when I was a little kid, I got into acting. So we were living in Philly. My mom was in the middle of like getting separated and divorced from my dad, and before my biological dad to like my stepdad, who's like my dad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like the one who comes to all the shows and all that. But I just remember I was acting. I was always a little kid. I was like Tinkerbell, and it was like a community theater, you know, like a little. It was in like a suburb of Philadelphia. But
Which
like,
one?
I remember, was it Chestnut Hill?
Okay.
Or Mount Airy? But I lived in Chestnut. My parents moved a few times.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have young parents.
I asked because my parents are in Drexel Hill, and my sister's in West Philly, and
Oh.
the other sibling is in Fishtown.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay,
I
so
have
you got-
never lived in Philly, but everyone
Yeah.
else is living in Philly.
Yo, those neighborhoods are like, this is the neighborhood. Like, it's not that we don't live there. We
Yeah,
live
they're
there.
possessive.
You're like, yeah, like, okay.
Okay,
It's like
so
Brooklyn.
Tinkerbell.
But I did, but then my mom got remarried. We moved to Jersey, South Jersey. I had a teacher who really hated me in the sixth grade. She like would be straight up just like, you know when someone talks to you and their sound goes down, they're like, Christine. Like, hi, Chris. She'd be like, hi, Holly. Like, her voice always went down. Always went down. And I tried out for the play, and I hadn't done any acting since I left Philly when I was 9. So I was like 11. And I was like, I auditioned for this play, but my mom had a dentist appointment. She's going to pick me up, and the callback sheet wasn't going up to the end of the day. So I was like, Miss Didrikson, did I make it in the callback? And she goes, no, and you aren't very good. Yo.
Whoa!
She, like, crushed the acting in me for years.
How could she crush a child like that?
That's
That's just
see
so
you next Tuesday.
cruel.
That's that evil.
Ah!
Yeah. Evil-hearted woman. Evil-hearted woman.
Yeah, when I hear people say, "Oh, anyone can be a teacher," that is not true.
No, they could pass the test,
Yeah.
but you actually being no, she was horrible. She hated me.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, but I stopped for like I only tried out, and then I was 11. I had done since I was 9. It wasn't until I was almost 17 that I started acting again, and then I was in a boarding school. And this girl, my cheerleading squad, was like, you know, my mom's a director, and she's going to be directing the play here. Why don't you just try out for it? And I was like, oh, because I I felt
Did
like
you tell that friend about what happened to you?
no, I
Okay.
didn't.
But she sensed.
Yeah, because I was like, we talked about movies all the time, and
Okay.
she was a Broadway actress, a child Broadway
Okay.
actress that was just in our boarding school, and so I auditioned for the play. I got the lead in the play, and her mother and then the new acting teacher at our school were gung ho, like Hollie Harper. They were gung ho. They changed the trajectory of my life. They
Good.
taught me what theaters. I didn't even know what a theater school was.
Okay.
I had no idea what that. I was like, what is that? Like, what is? I didn't know what that was. And so they found the auditions. They were like, this is where you need to go. This is what you need to do. They helped. They helped me do everything. They really changed the path of my life. And that director, I still talk to her on Facebook at least once a month. This is like 30 years later. I still talk to her.
That's precious.
Yeah, she's just a really good person. Just a really good person.
So you went to DePaul.
Yeah, I went to DePaul Theater School.
Okay, you gonna talk shit or sing your praises?
I don't know. Well,
somewhere
to
in
me,
between?
it was both.
Okay.
It was a horrible time in my life, and it was a beautiful time in my
Okay.
life. The actual instruction, because I had to really sort this out in 2020 with the racial reckoning. Because I saw something with John Baptiste, and all these different black actors and musicians were talking about what it's like to be black at music and theater conservatories, and I was like, I don't think a lot of people really
Yeah.
understand, you know. But the actual instruction I got, I think, is second to nothing. But by then, okay, because my mom got remarried, and my dad's awesome. My sibling, I got new siblings, they're awesome. But I went from being in like a Philly, which was like a Brooklyn. It was very
Yeah, yeah.
multicultural, to being like in a Trump Pence land
Oh no.
in South Jersey. And so that teacher, I was the only black kid in the class. She was just the evil ass white lady, just you're not good. Like it was like those movies you would see
Yeah.
on like TNT, and you're like, this is so broadly rated. But like it really was my childhood. Like
Yeah.
I remember being the first day of school, like getting on a school bus, and there were, all white kids and me, and like nobody even wanted to sit next to me. Like it was
Gross.
I dealt with a lot of racism when I was little. And what's crazy is the fact that I see these people now, and we're adults, and we're like, hey, how are you? Like, I don't feel it. Yeah, I'm like, hi. Like, I don't think they really processed how they affected a kid. Do you know what I mean? I don't think
Yeah.
but my point is, I went there, and then I went to boarding school. Even though my boarding school, it is my favorite place on earth, is my boarding school. Like when I go back to my boarding school now, I like lay on the grass and I cry. Like I want to be buried there. Like I love that place.
How many years were you there?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
I went back
Wow.
and I taught sketch comedy last January. Well, this past January. I love the place. They changed my life. Like they really changed my life with a teacher and everything there. But it was mostly a white space. And then by the time I got to theater school, there was a part in me that was just burnt out from being in white spaces.
Yeah.
And then I had, like, it was funny how there's like the racial reckoning in 2020. That shit happened for me in 1988. I was a teenager. That happened for me. All of a sudden, I just started really looking around at power structures, class, gender, race, just capitalism, just being an American. Because being at school, you talk about, our school was a Quaker boarding school. All you do is talk about ideas. And
Right.
you live there. So there's no off button. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yes.
no, and the thing is, either you fit in or you don't. You know what I mean? If you're like, I just think America's cool, you're not gonna fit in. You know what I mean? They're gonna be like, you don't question some of these. So by the time I got to theater school, it was a nightmare. On the other half of it, for me, was a nightmare racially. Racially, it was a nightmare. But for me, like internally, there was nobody beating me down. There was nobody mean. You know what I mean? It was just sort of like, I would question things like they have children's plays, right?
Yeah.
And it's children's theater, and then they would have 3 days a week. They have a children's show for like 4 months, and we have these all school critiques. Where like the whole school piles in the lobby, and we chop up a show. You basically drag a show for like, you know what I mean? At the end, you're like, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? That shit is traumatic, and you're like 20 years old. trying to defend your fucking life. But like, we were at one of these critiques, and it was for Cinderella, and I was on crew for Cinderella. Basically, I waited in the wings. I changed some girl's dress halfway through for like 3 months at 8 a.m. You know, you're hungover. You're a freshman in college. You barely know how to drink. I just remember, like, a lot of days I was blue and green trying to change people's skirts backstage.
Wow.
We were at the critique, and someone said, does anybody have anything to say about our choice of player? This, and I said, this is Chicago, and 40,000 kids have seen the show, and about 35,000 of them are black. Why are we putting forth a show that just completely upholds white feminine beauty for 35,000 black kids? You could have heard a pin drop. This was like 1990. People were like, what?
Because it's Cinderella.
And I remember being like, fuck Cinderella. Like, I started thinking about and I said, but do you understand that if you are black in this country, you grow up with just white standards of beauty all the time. Even white women can't even get to the fucking standard of beauty they push for white women. You know what I mean? Like, they can't even attain that, lest everybody else. And so it was tough because I would ask hard questions that were related to, why don't we study these plays?
Yeah.
Why do we have to audition for all these plays? Like, you're made to, it's mandatory, but they're all white plays. And they're like, because you need to know that's audition in the real world. I was like, but in the real world, I wouldn't be auditioning for these things.
Right.
Like, on what planet would you, like, are you going to go out and audition for The Color Purple? Like, now. Now. Like, you're going to audition for something that aligns with you and who you are and what's feasible. Like, hello. And it's not about being racist. It's just a matter of just reality. So that was very tough for me because I realized that my boarding school built this, at the time, unattainable way of looking at the world that really kind of destroyed a lot of I started to see people as, it destroyed my ability to see a lot of people as less than completely racist or stupid or sexist. I had to really not unlearn, but kind of dumb myself down in a lot of ways to deal with a lot of people, because I realized people are just not talking about these things. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that you have to let go of a lot of these things to be in the industry.
Yeah.
And then it was very hard for me when I graduated because I would go on auditions and I had an agent, but I would like read material and I hated it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get book gigs? Why can't I do things? And I realized, because you don't like the material.
Yeah.
But when I would tell other actors that, they would be like, well, if you want to work, you're going to, I'm like, yeah, I know that. I'm just being honest about it. But then when my funny bone kicked in, I did a short film with this girl about a year in. I did a short film with this girl. I played her bratty little sister. I never got to be the bratty little sister. I was 6 kids in my family. I was a middle sister, but my older sister, she didn't really do any of the things first. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like dating first, this first. So I never got the luxury of being the bratty little sister. So when I got to play a bratty little sister for the first time, I'll never forget the directors. People were taking me aside and they're like, you really should do comedy. You really nailed that. And that's not who you are, like who you came in. And so when the funny bone kicked in as a 25-year-old, that helped me because it gave me something more to latch onto.
Yeah. When did you start writing sketch?
It was crazy. I wrote sketches in theater school.
Okay.
But this is so stupid. One of the teachers was like, you shouldn't be doing this. You're an actor. You're an acting program. You're not in a writing program. You need to focus on.
Do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
All the way through.
You need to focus on acting. And so I was really like writing sketches underground for about 4 years.
Underground.
Like, to me, underground, like I'm a fucking enslaved African. You know what I mean? I'm just like, nobody knows. You know what I mean? Because think about the 90s. Like, if you're an actor, you're an actor. Only it was the men that were allowed to be. He's a Ed Burns. He's a Spike Lee. He's the all the. No, that was not for women, and not for young women, and not for young feminine-looking women. Let's be real. If you're a young feminine-looking woman, you're having people. You're pretty.
Yeah.
Girl, just be pretty.
Yeah.
You could just. And it's like I have I have another side of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've dealt with this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is the Holly episode, so
But no, but
yes.
you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
You're like, girl, you pretty, you shut, and you're
Yeah.
like, thanks, that's great. That shit will fade. And I still have my thoughts.
Yeah.
So I started really writing sketches when I was about 28.
Mm-hmm.
I was 28 and I was planning my wedding. I put stand-up on hold. I started stand-up at 26 and then I stopped
Okay.
cold turkey for like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was putting stand-up on hold and I was playing this wedding and I just started writing sketches. I would go see other people stand up and I would say, hey, I took your joke and I developed it into a sketch. And they were like, what? Like, what? That's my joke. I'm like, I'm not putting it on. I'm just telling you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they were like, that's kind of funny. So I started taking my jokes and other people's bits and developing them into sketches. And then I formed my first sketch group. So that's how it happened.
That was the Dope Show?
Yeah, the Dope Show.
Okay, and then when did American Candy start
Oh,
taking
God.
off?
I did a Dope Show from like 99 through 2001, maybe 2000, 2001. And then I started writing comedic plays. One sketch did really well. One sketch, and then it was called The Young and the Chocolate. It was A Young and the Chocolate, and it was a sketch, and then I made it into a full-blown play. Like, because I was watching shit like Anchorman. I was watching all the Judd Apatow, Will Ferrell, long-form, and I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I just thought they're just funny plays, but they really were like long-form sketches. So I did The Young and the Chocolate. And there was like a battle between this girl who lived in Harlem and a girl who lived in Washington Heights, who both had babies with the same dude, and he died, and it was like, who gets what? It was silly. It was so silly. And then I did a play called Jack and Jill that was like a flip side where there were bougie black folk, but they were separated by two half sisters, and they're each of their families. So I'm really good with family dynamics and people, but American Candy didn't come along until 2009. I did this play. I did this play of Jack and Jill. We did it like 2-3 times. We actually shot like a little short. I did a web series out of it. And then that was by the time, then I got pregnant. You got pregnant, I had a baby, and all of a sudden I was coming out of, Luna was about almost 1. And I was like, a good friend of mine, here's the thing. A lot of times when women now, I don't know about now, but when you have a baby, girl, people can just ditch you.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
What? This friend of mine, Nina Ash, she really kind of like saved my professional life. She was like,
Good.
Are you moving back to New York? I was like, yeah. She goes, because I'm working with theater. She was in my sketch show. See, she was in my sketch show. And me and my husband went to their wedding. They came to our wedding. Her husband, Eugene Ash, he's a really good writer-director. And so we were just like two young couples, and we were going to each other's stuff, and it was really cool. And then she was in, she's one of the funniest actresses I've ever seen in my life. But she's like, I'm working with this theater company. They're doing like a improv thing. You want to be part of the improv group? And I was like, I auditioned for it. I got in. It was fun. But I got to be honest. I love them. I don't really like improv. And I respect people who do improv. It's just not for me. But I knew how to do it because in theater school, your whole first year is improv. So I was like, oh, shit, I know how to do this. Had a great time. But I wanted something permanent. I like writing. I like writing. I think that's a problem with improv. I like writing. I like sets. I like to build the world, And so then she was like, hey, our theater company wants to start a sketch group, but we want you to head it.
Ooh.
And so I started the group with them, and then it was really successful. And about a year in, they wanted to just be like, okay, you just take it your own, and you do your own thing with it. And I did, and we stayed friends. Like, I love them. I still love their theater company, but I did American Candy and started in 2009.
I want to, because unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, but I do want to hear just a little bit about your Facebook posts because you do write on Facebook, and I find many of your posts funny, eloquent, insightful, and you bring so much of your theater and comedy experience into and movie ambitions, right, and insights. You bring all of that into it, but you write a lot about parenting too. So I'm curious.
So who am I going to talk to? Like, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, I just want to hear a little bit about what goes into those posts? Are they just like, this is what I'm thinking this minute, or are they more premeditated than that, or what?
I think it depends on what it is. Like if I'm talking about parenting, a lot of it is like, I'll just be at the playground. It's crazy because I'm not part of the playground. I was so part of. Let me tell you something. You don't have kids. I can tell.
No.
You don't have kids because first of all, you accessorize. You look rested. You have nice skin. You're not bitter yet. Like I can feel it. You know what I mean? Like you still got your first set of abs. You know what I mean? You got your first booty. You know what I mean? When you're a mom, your shit is like reconstructed all the time. No. Like you got joy about you. Look at me. But I think a lot of I used to be part of the playground for all these years, and then one day your kid's like, I don't want to get no more, and you're like, but that was our shit. Like that was our spot. So I was part of the playground hardcore for like 8 years, and all of a sudden my kids are like, I don't want to go anymore, and it's like, guess that life is over. You know what I mean? But it would be like me on the playground. Everything I was writing, because it was, like the social media and the iPhone, to me, is like, because the iPhone came out the week my daughter was born. It was crazy. My iPhone came out. I was nursing a newborn baby, and my husband was like, hey, I got you this thing called the iPhone. I was like, huh? And I was like, I was being like, what? Like, I was never really even about my phone.
Yeah.
Until I had an iPhone and had a baby. Because I couldn't read magazines anymore. That's the thing. I could not get through a magazine. So I turned from, it's crazy. I turned from a person before I had kids. I'm like ashamed. Before I had kids, I would spend, honestly, working on one play for like a year and do that play and have maybe like 8 performances there, 10 performances there. After I had my kids, I worked 10 times as hard.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's about, but I think a lot of it is because the writing, it was constant on my phone.
Yeah.
But the Facebook posts about parenting are so much about, I'm usually write them on a train, or I'm at home, I just got home, or, it's always like, and I had this one hashtag, on the way, for like years. On the way. Because just so many things happen. Okay, it would always be like on the way to pick up my daughter, on the way home. You know, like one of my favorite Facebook posts is when my daughter was like, tell me some stories of college. And I start going through, I'm like, no, I can't say that. No. No. My graduation was great, you know.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have, but it has been a pleasure, Ms. Hollie Harper.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching Badass Lady Folk or listening. We air on Manhattan Neighborhood Network and Radio Free Brooklyn and podcast platforms everywhere. Tune in next time.